Despite all the injuries that Utah had last season, Kyle Whittingham's Utes were still a really good team in a loaded Pac 12 conference last year. The Utes now have a scenery change. The wild, unpredictable world of the Big 12 has come calling, and yet this is the favorite to get out of that conference and guarantee their spot in the college football playoff with a conference title. Can Utah make some noise in the postseason in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today, and welcome to prediction season. We have now hit double digits. Video number 10 out of 134. Yes, 134. That's every single team in the FBS ranks have a prediction video on my channel, which means I'm doing your favorite team. So hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you know when that video gets uploaded. And thank you for watching this video. Help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And if you want to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, you can like, you can comment, you can share, and anything else you do to interact with the channel helps support what I do. And I greatly appreciate all of it. Let's talk about Utah football here in 2024. But before we do that, I got to tell you how we do it. We're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and then at the end of it all, we'll go through game by game, preview and predict what the Utah Utes are going to be doing here in 2024. All right, enough said. Let's go ahead and dive on in here to the Utah Utes in 2024. Couple footnotes before we do so. This bar right here says the stats, both offensively and defensively, from last season's team, as well as right below the team's logo, I have put the coaching staff in there for your viewing pleasure. So, Kyle Whittingham's group is coming back for their first season as a member of the Big 12 Conference, and, well, they get a blessing. Cam Rising is back for a 7th year. He has had a lot of injuries over his career. I believe most recently was an ACL that kept him out of all of last season. So the two quarterbacks that got the most playing time last year, and Bryson Barnes and Nate Johnson, both are gone through the transfer portal. About 1,200 yards, about 2,000 yards between the two of them last season. Barnes had 12 touchdowns, 11 picks. Johnson 3 touchdowns and no picks. So the quarterback room, if Cam Rising stays healthy, we hope and plead. If Cam Rising stays healthy, my desk is made of wood. I just knocked on wood. He is going to be an electric quarterback and a great leader for this Utah team, as he is shown to be in the past. That he needs to stay healthy in order for this Utah team to find the success that they so desire in 2024. Your running back room takes a couple of hits here as well. Jaquindon Jackson, who was the leading rusher of this team last season, 797 yards and 4 touchdowns and 161 carries, is gone, as well as Chris Curry. But you do return your second leading rusher in Jalen Glover, 562 yards and 2 touchdowns. Micah Bernard and Mike Mitchell will be back to this running back room, as well as a transfer coming over. Anthony Woods played with the Idaho Vandals last season, so that is a pretty darn good weapon to have there. You also take a look at the transfer portal in the quarterback room. Sam Huard and Dallin Engelman are going to be some names coming in, as well as a freshman and Isaac Wilson. Forgot to mention those on screen. Huard, of course, a former a really good, highly touted player that'll be backing up Cam Rising. So already, even if Cam Rising isn't healthy, that is a full step up in the quarterback room with Huard there, in my personal opinion. We already talked about the running backs. Let's take a look at the wide receiver room now, just to recap the running backs. It'll be Jalen Glover, Micah Bernard, and Mike Mitchell, as well as an Idaho transfer in Anthony Woods that leads that room. Devon Vele is off to now playing on Sundays. He was a great player for this Utah team, 593 yards and 3 touchdowns receiving last year, as well as Mikey Matthews, the 4th leading receiver on this team last year, is gone through the transfer portal. Hey, though, you do get a lot of guys back. Money Parks is back, Micah Pittman is back, and Minor McLean. They all return to this Utah wide receiver room. Parks, 293 yards last year. McLean, 269 yards last season. And then Pittman, only 3 catches for 20 yards, but he is still a very talented player in his own right. There are a lot of transfers coming into this wide receiver room. Dorian Singer, a former Arizona Wildcat and most recently USC Trojan, has transferred in. Damian Alford transfers in from Syracuse, really good player there. And Tayshawn Lyons is over from Washington. That's a 4-star, 3-star, and 4-star transfer to give a boost to this wide receiver room, in which I think you could argue is the best wide receiver room that Cam Rising has had to work with during his long, successful tenure with this program. Tight ends, you do lose Thomas Yasmin to the NFL, but finally we get to see Brant Kuithe healthy and on the field. He did not play a part in last season either, but he is back and he is healthy. He is ready to go. King and Sugu Turaga, I know I butchered that last name, and I apologize profusely, as well as Carson Ryan, who is a UCLA transfer coming in, should give a nice boost to Kuithe in this tight end room. On the offensive line, you do lose a couple really notable players. Laumea and Bills are gone to play on Sundays, and you do lose a guy through the portal as well. On to the offensive line, though, it's going to look like this. Lomu, Togiai, Mokofisi, Fano, Maea, and Kump are all going to be names that return to this offensive line, with Caleb and Tanoa, as well as Michael, really being able to lead this offensive line unit. Again, knock on wood. If Cam Rising stays healthy, this is going to be a really good offense. And that passing number from last season is definitely going to take a step in the right direction. Yes, losing Jaquindon Jackson hurts, but Glover, Bernard, those are still really good weapons. I think Anthony Woods is going to be a great running back for this team. And again, I talked about it a minute ago, but you have Brant Kuithe back healthy. That's a big boost, and possibly the most talented pass-catching room that Cam Rising has had to work with as a Utah Ute so far, along with a pretty darn solid offensive line as well. Let's talk about the defense for Utah. This is what has led the team over the past couple of seasons, especially with their physicality up front. They do lose a couple guys in that defensive front seven, though, as Jonah Ellis is going to be off to be playing on Sundays as well. Very good defensive player for the Utah Utes during his time. That edge rusher type player, 37 tackles, get ready for this, 12 sacks last season, was among the nation's best and led Utah last year. He's going to be gone, as well as Chase Kennedy leaves through the transfer portal. However, Van Fillinger, Connor O'Toole, Keanu Tanuvasa, and Junior Tafuna, all names that come back to this Utah team to help lead this defensive line, as well as you get some guys coming over from the transfer portal here. John Henry Daly comes over from, Utah's rival in BYU. Yeah, the Cougar is now a Ute, so John Henry Daly is there, as well as Paul Fitzgerald, who comes over from Utah State. They originally did have Kennius Vaughn on this team, but he transferred into Utah and then transferred over to another program as well. So they will not have his services. But with Daly and Fitzgerald to help boost up this defensive line, that's a really good defensive front four. Justin Medlock has gone through the portal, and Hayden Fury out of the linebacker room has since graduated. However, Levani Dumani, Kareem Reed, Lander Barton, and Josh Calvert, all names that return to this linebacker room to make for a really darn solid defensive front seven here. Damouni led the way in tackles for this team last year with 87 of them. Reed was second in line with 67. And then again, those two with Barton and Calvert, two pretty darn good linebackers in their own right at times last season. They're going to give a nice big boost to this linebacking room. Cornerbacks, well, Miles Battle, hey, guess what? Yeah, that's right. He is now off to play on Sundays. He was a very good player here for this team. 32 tackles, 3 pass defended, and a pick last season. And Jatravis Broughton is going to be leaving through the transfer portal. 37 tackles, 2 pass defended, was one of their better corners last season. However, Zamiah Vaughn and Elijah Davis are going to be names that come back to this cornerback room. Vaughn, 53 tackles, 6 passes defended last season, but that did leave the cornerback room a little bit thin. So what did they do? They went and got guys through the transfer portal. Keenan Johnson comes over here from Georgia Tech. Only one N in Keenan, so I had to fix that. As well as Cameron Calhoun. He transfers into this program as well. Former player at the University of Michigan. So those are some really talented names coming into the cornerback room. In the safety room, well, you do lose 2 really good players to the NFL, and Cole Bishop and Sione Vaki. Vaki kind of acted as a safety / running back last year, so you do lose his services, as well as Britton Allen, who has gone through the transfer portal. However, Tao Johnson, Nate Ritchie, Jonathan Hall, Snowden Smith, as well as Alakai Gilman coming over from the transfer portal. He is coming over from Stanford, will help give a nice boost to the safety room. And hey, kickers are people too, no notable losses, but Jack Meester Cole comes back to be that punter. Cole Becker and Joey Cheek will be there as the kickers for Utah in 2024. Apologies for the mispronunciations, but when you take a look at the defensive side here for the Utah Utes, it's a really good defensive front seven, and we know the style of defense that Kyle Whittingham has his teams play. It's hard-nosed, it's physical, and it is going to punch you in the mouth. It's going to bring physicality to the Big 12 Conference, and it's what helps make Utah one of the favorites in the conference this season. As I went a little bit too early, so you see the schedule now on screen for the Utah Utes in 2024. Hey, how do we do schedules here? Well, I'm glad you asked. Home games are going to be underlined and road games are going to be in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game in green is a game I see Utah being able to win fairly easily. Any game in yellow, watch out. Could be a little bit of a scare, but the Utes will walk away with the win. And red, of course, is a loss. Should have no problem in game one of the season with Southern Utah. So that should be a pretty easy win there for the Utah Utes, as the Thunderbirds will be no match for one of the Big 12's top programs. Baylor is one of the weird teams to try to figure out. In fact, you could say that about a lot of teams in the Big 12 Conference this season. Baylor, I just don't have a lot of confidence in. Dave Aranda, I do think, is a pretty darn good head coach, but I don't think the talent on this roster is going to be where it needs to be to compete with Utah. Now, even though this is a Big 12 team, this is a non-Big 12 game. It will not count in terms of the conference standings, and it was an absolute battle between these two sides last season. Utah pulling away with the last second win. Now with the home field advantage in Rice-Eccles Stadium, it'll be too much for the Bears to handle. I got the Utes being able to win this game. And then going on the road to play yet another in-state counterpart in the Utah State Aggies. I do think Utah State's going to be a pretty competitive team in the Mountain West Conference, so could be a little bit of a tricky game for Utah at points, but Cam Rising, this wide receiver room, and this defense will step up. I think Utah wins that game there fairly handedly before entering their true Big 12 schedule. Again, if you didn't hear me say it earlier, Baylor does not count as a Big 12 game. They had the game scheduled before Utah joined the conference, so even though Utah's playing 10 Big 12 teams, only 9 of them, these last 9 I'm about to talk about here, are going to count in terms of conference standings. Let's talk about Oklahoma State here. If you are going to be counting out Mike Gundy, you are a fool. Never, ever, ever do that. Oklahoma State returns one of, if not the best running back in the entire country in Ollie Gordon. As long as Alan Bowman can stay healthy, they have a really good wide receiver room to help take advantage of some of the weaknesses that Utah may possess defensively that may show on film here but over these next 3 games. And I think Oklahoma State has everything they need to take down this Utah team. Cam Rising company are going to be very, very competitive. I see this being a back and forth type game. The offense is going to be good. The defense is going to be physical. I do think this is going to be a really fun matchup to watch, but I do have Utah losing that game there to the Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think there are going to be a couple things that struggle to get going for Utah in the early going. I think with this being a road game, Oklahoma State catches them and Utah loses their first game of 2024. A former Pac-12 matchup now coming over to the Big 12 Conference. It is the Arizona Wildcats and the Utah Utes. Don't get it twisted. Even though Jed Fish is gone, Brett Brennan is coming in here. Love his passion, love his energy, and I still love this Arizona team, especially on the offensive end with quarterback Noah Fafita and wide receiver Tairoa McMillan. Boy, that's one of the better quarterback wide receiver duos we have in the nation this upcoming season, and Arizona is going to be a very good offensive team. However, where I think they struggle is going to be the defensive side of the ball. They lose a ton of players off of that defense last season, and I see them almost certainly taking a step backwards on the defensive end. Now, there are some good players that come in through the portal there, but especially with Cam Rising back, I think Utah's going to have what it takes to take advantage of that Arizona defense, and while Fafita, McMillan, and the Wildcats will battle offensively, Utah's defense will make a stop or two that helps them seal the game and beat the Arizona Wildcats. First bye week of the season comes after that game, and then you go on the road to play the Arizona State Sun Devils. I think Kenny Dillingham's group is going to take a step in the right direction in 2024. I don't see them being elite, but I do see them being pretty competitive amongst the ranks here in the Big 12 Conference. However, that being said, I think this is going to be a fairly easy one for the Utes to go on the road and be able to win. Dillingham is a really good coach, again, former Oregon offensive coordinator, now in year number 2. Quarterback room is a little bit of a question for Arizona, not in terms of talent, just who that starter happens to be. And there are a lot of good players with this Sun Devil team, but I think Utah's physicality on defense, Cam Rising on offense, will be able to take down the Sun Devils. You need to come back home here and play the TCU Horned Frogs. I think TCU, again, pretty competitive team here. We know what Sonny Dykes can do with a team that maybe a lot of people count out as TCU. Again, happened to make a run all the way to the national championship game just 2 years ago. I don't think that same magic is going to continue for Sonny Dykes in 2024. Again, I see TCU being a pretty competitive team, got some good players on both sides, but I like Utah's offense better. I like Utah's defense better. I think they'll get a close win here at home against the TCU Horned Frogs. On the road against Houston, I love the Willie Fritz hire. That is a slam dunk home run. Whatever adjective and verbiage you want to use, Willie Fritz at Houston is a great hire. I think with the talent that is on this Houston team, it sets them up to be fairly competitive, not competitive with a team like the Utah Utes, though. Maybe this is one of those trap game scenarios where you see Utah and a big-name first-year head coach pull off the stunner. I just don't see it happening with Houston. So I'm going to take the Utes in that one. Wouldn't be surprised if Houston makes a pretty good game out of it, especially with Fritz being that head coach. Okay, your second bye week comes here before. Oh, yeah, baby. The rivalry is back. Utah and BYU, the battle in the state of Utah. I can't wait to watch this game here as a conference matchup. We're probably going to end up getting this one year after year after year. And while BYU has got a lot of really good pieces, I am really, really high on this Utah team. The Cougars give the Utes a fight, but I like Cam Rising and the Utes to pull that one out. Colorado, as per usual, or I should say as from last year as well, is another very interesting team to try to dissect. They have a lot of good pieces. Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter. Again, that team is completely retooled through the transfer portal. I just don't think it's sustainable to try to build a team through the transfer portal in this era of college athletics. Colorado may be able to give Utah a little bit of a fight, but especially that physicality on defense and that pass rush will take advantage of Colorado's weakness on the offensive line. Utah will win that one. Iowa State, much like a team I talked about in my last video from the Big 12 ranks in West Virginia, could be a sleeper team here in 2024. I like Rocco Becht and a lot of these young guys that Iowa State is now going to have another year more experience under their belt. But I still like the Utes more, especially with this one being at home. Cyclones give them a fight, but the Utes come away with a win. And then a tricky one on the road against a really good Central Florida team. Gus Malzahn has got a lot of very good weapons. As per usual, UCF always a very, very competitive team. They were competitive last year as a member of the Big 12 Conference. They will be so again in 2024. But I am really, really high on this Utah team. UCF gives them a good fight, but the Utes come away with the win, which leads me to an 11-1 record for the Utes in their first year as a member of the Big 12. Again, I think the running back room is really good. We know the defense is going to be physical. That secondary, I think, is going to be one of the best in the entire country. Well, okay, no, sorry, not the secondary. I think that defensive front is going to be one of the best in the entire country, especially being able to generate pressure, be able to slow down the run. And with Cam Rising back, sky's the limit here for Utah. I could just as easily see this team going undefeated as I do 11-1 right now. I think the Cowboys catch them. That is their lone loss for me, but I love the Utah Utes entering 2024. This is my favorite out of the Big 12. And hey, with a record like that, probably getting a spot in the college football playoff is in order. Let me know what you think about the Utes in the comment section below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. And Florida State, you're going to be up next. Goodbye.